Sergio Kitchens, better known as Gunna, also faced RICO charges alongside Young Thug and the rest of the YSL gang. But unlike many in the indictment who were charged with some pretty serious crimes, Gunna was in fact charged with just one count, that being conspiracy to violate the RICO Act. Gunna was then further mentioned as being part of 10 overt acts in furtherance of the overall gang conspiracy, the more serious ones being connected to the September 2017 traffic stop, when Gunna and Thug were found to be in possession of a stolen gun and a mixture of illegal party supplies, and a May 2018 traffic stop where Gunna and Thug's car had nothing illegal in it, but their alleged entourage in a separate car were found to be carrying weapons with high-capacity magazines. But besides these two traffic stop arrests, the overt acts would also include some very random music releases and social media posts, such as the music video for Lil Keed and Gunna's song Fox 5, where Gunna can be seen wearing the YSL pendant and rapping the incredibly generic line, "We got 10 100-round choppers." The music video for the song Take It to Trial by Thug, Yak Gotti and Gunna, where Gunna raps some equally ambiguous bars about guns and goons. And the music video for the song Ski by Thug and Gunna, where Gunna mentions toting an FN gun, while his friends keep Glocks and that he's rolling with the Rollin' 60s. And as a cherry on top, the indictment would also include a photo of Gunna and Thug posted on social media, together with the caption, "Slat Business YSL4L. In all seriousness, the claims that these acts were somehow proof of Gunna's participation in the criminal street gang YSL seem sketchy at best, and much more likely, the prosecutors were simply thirsty at attaching him to the indictment due to his name and fame, and in order to possibly get him to cooperate and spill the beans on bigger fish like Thug. Unfortunately for Gunna, despite the state seemingly having rather poor evidence against him, his legal battle would get off to a poor start, as on May the 23rd, the judge would deny his bond about a week after his initial arrest.
Today in a Fulton County courtroom, a judge denied bond to many alleged members of the Young Slime Life street gang. This includes Sergio Kitchens, aka rapper Gunna. We are still waiting to hear if the judge will also deny bond for rapper Young Thug, whose real name is Jeffrey Lamar Williams.
About a month later, Gunna would release a long statement on Twitter in which he would start by mentioning his hit song Pushing P and noting how 2022 had been one of the best years of his life, before recounting the difficult circumstances that he'd grown up in and how hard he'd worked to better his life and the lives of his family. He would also accuse the prosecution of painting a false picture of him and unfairly targeting black artists, while in the caption, he would explain how he was being kept in lockdown 22 hours a day and in a cell with no windows. Unfortunately, that would do little to improve his circumstances, and in July, his bond was denied again, with the judge citing fears of Gunna being a threat to the community and possibly trying to intimidate a witness.
This morning, rapper Gunna remains in jail. Thursday, a Fulton County judge once again denied him bond. The judge says Gunna, whose legal name is Sergio Kitchens, is still a threat to the community and could try to intimidate witnesses. Gunna and rapper Young Thug, whose legal name is Jeffrey Williams, are both still pleading for release from jail while their cases play out in court. Their trial isn't until January of next year.
A few months later in October, Gunna's legal team would make yet another desperate plea for bail, which was duly shot down in the courtroom, after a back and forth where Gunna's lawyer would argue that the evidence against Gunna was weak, including the reference to that May 2018 traffic stop, which he argued had no evidence tying Gunna himself to any wrongdoing, while the prosecution would argue that Gunna was indeed a bona fide crip and that people in his gang were offering to kill people for him.
Mr. Kitchens, where are you, sir? Raise your hand if you can hear my voice. All right, thank you, sir.
So whatever the state's position was on Mr. Kitchens in Overt Act 75, when it argued to the court, the court should, at this point, just kind of put aside and understand that I'm not going to suggest that what they were saying was false, but clearly they don't have the evidence to support Overt Act 75, which was the overt act that dealt with supposedly violence in connection to Mr. Kitchens.
It was simply, I believe, one co-defendant wishing this defendant a happy C-Day, if I'm not mistaken, and imploring a person to tell Gunna that this person would whack someone. I would still whack someone.
Alleged to have done anything. I mean, I suppose I could say I would do anything for my good friend Brian Steele. I'd do anything for him. And then the next thing you know, Brian Steele gets denied bond because I said that? That doesn't even make sense to say you're going to be denied bond. You'll spend, the better part of 2 years if this case goes to trial. Next year it doesn't end until the end. A year and a half because someone else said that they would do something.
I just got to do what I got to do. I don't find any change in circumstances that would allow me to or move me from changing my decision as to as to bond.
Clearly, the chances of Gunna getting bail were practically non-existent. So after around half a year of incarceration, it would seem like Gunna had finally had enough. And in a surprising turn of events, in December 2022, Gunna would accept a plea deal, resulting in his immediate release. Gunna would plead guilty to just one count of racketeering conspiracy, in a move known as the Alford plea, which allowed him to maintain his innocence while accepting that a jury might convict him based on the evidence. While this decision allowed Gunna to avoid a lengthy trial, not to mention a possible prison sentence, it also triggered an immediate backlash within the hip-hop community, because while Gunna would put out a statement following his release where he denied any kind of snitching, a video would be leaked that showed Gunna repeatedly saying "yes ma'am" during the hearing for his plea deal in court, which many people took as a sign of cooperation with the authorities, as Gunna was essentially admitting to the court that YSL was indeed a criminal gang before Thug had a chance to clear his name at trial.
Sergio Kitchen's press statement suggests in the case of his Alford plea, he's, quote, maintaining my innocence toward the same charge, unquote. It says, while I've agreed to always be truthful, I want to make it perfectly clear that I have not made any statements, have not been interviewed, have not cooperated, have not agreed to testify or be a witness for or against any party in the case, and have absolutely no intention of being involved in the trial process in any way. In court, some startling statements.
Please state after each statement whether or not you agree or acknowledge that the statements are true, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
I became affiliated with YSL around 2016. Is that true as it pertains to you, Mr. Kitchens?
Yes, ma'am.
YSL is a music label and a gang, and you have personal knowledge that members or associates of YSL have committed crimes in furtherance of the gang.
Yes, ma'am.
You were present when law enforcement officers stopped a vehicle in which you were present along with Jeffrey Williams, wherein hydrocodone, methamphetamines, and a firearm were recovered. These items did not belong to you.
Yes, ma'am.
And do you acknowledge the following statement? I recognize, accept, and deeply regret that my talent and music indirectly furthered YSL the gang to the detriment of my community. YSL as a gang must end. Is that your statement or acknowledgement?
Yes.
The situation became the subject of public debate, with Gunna finding himself being labelled a rat or a snitch by many people who believed that he had betrayed Thug and YSL. And it wasn't only the fans who were being vocal, as some of Gunna's peers would also voice their opinions, like Boosie, who would tweet the video together with an emotional caption saying just how disappointed he would have been if he was young Thug. Lil Durk, on the other hand, would tell DJ Academics that there's no denying that Gunna told, and that he hates all rats because he loves Thug. And although the two would have a hit song together, Lil Durk would claim that he would never perform his song with Gunna ever again.
If you a rat, you a rat. And if you rewind this clip a little bit, I looked into the camera and I told you, if you're a rat, I hate you. Because I love Thug.
Did you ever think, though, I mean, there's politics to it a little bit, though, right? Like, you have a hit song with him. Like, I ain't gonna, if I have a hit song with a guy.
Like, if I got a hit song with somebody, and I'm not even talking about Gunna, if I got a hit song with somebody, and that motherfucker got 10 times platinum, I'm never playing it on stage.
If he told, nah, you're lying. You can't hate rats that much.
Gunna's lawyer, Steve Sado, who likely felt guilty for the backlash that Gunna was experiencing, would also comment on the matter, saying that Gunna did not snitch and pointing out that the police statement cannot be used in court against any of the other defendants, while also linking a Rolling Stone article where an unnamed source with knowledge of the case would explain that the plea agreement had been worded in such a way that wouldn't have allowed either the prosecution or the defense to call Gunna to testify at trial. But Gunna, on the other hand, would remain relatively quiet about the matter. But in January, he would announce his return to social media, whilst also saying that there's only one side and that he's still representing YSL, the music label, as well as saying free Young Thug and Yak Gotti. After this, Gunna would stay relatively quiet again until June 2023, when he would release his first song after getting out, titled Bread and Butter. In the track, he addresses the snitching rumors head on, questioning why would he pay his lawyers millions of dollars if not to avoid testifying, and that he never gave a statement or agreed to take the stand, so he still stands on his actions. Bread and Butter was soon followed by a full-length album titled A Gift and a Curse, with the concept of the album seemingly exploring both the gift of his creativity and freedom that he had back after accepting the plea, but also the curse of getting those charges and the subsequent loss of respect in the rap game after being labeled as a snitch. The project was a huge success, debuting at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with 85,000 albums sold in the first week. The album was also well received outside of the US, charting in 15 countries. The project was critically acclaimed too, with publications like Rolling Stone giving it a glowing review, noting how Gunna had reminded everyone just why they loved his music with this project, and praising him for meticulously clapping back at those snitching allegations. allegations. Now, I personally really enjoyed the project, and it was one of my favorite releases of 2023, Snitching or not, and it proved that at least musically, Gunna was here to stay, and the allegations certainly couldn't stop him at least making great solo music. However, only about a week after Gunna's album released, Young Thug would come out with his own album titled Business is Business, with the release of the album just so happening to coincide with his jail call to Lil Durk getting leaked online, showing that Thug was feeling anything but love for his former protege.
Hey Durk, I know I want you on. I'm dropping this surprise album on the same day Buddy dropped his album. That shit coming up soon. I need a verse from you. If you feel like replying, if you feel like you want to reply to it saying or something, man, don't do it. Drop it on my album. I'm dropping a surprise album on the same day that drop it. Send your verse in, bro. I want you and Wham on the same song. Send your verse in. I love you, bro.
Surprisingly, an audio engineer who worked on the album would also reveal how some of the songs on the project had been recorded through the jail phone, which meant that the project was a mixture of pre-recorded songs and some new material.
It's weird, you can tell it's like on the phone, but in the record, now that you've heard the vocals isolated and stuff, you can tell, but when it came out, people were like, yo, how's he talking about, how'd you guys do this in the past? I was like, nah, this was like all on the phone.
And this also meant that some lyrics dissing snitches, like this one from the track titled Jonesboro, could well have been aimed at Gunna directly. The album's opening track, Parade on Cleveland, also includes a phone call between Young Thug and Drake, where Thug can be heard saying a cryptic message of how he's pushing Peter better than any Peter pusher around, which sounds a bit like another diss towards Gunna, whose last hit song with Thug had been the track Pushing P. The title of the album, Business is Business, may also have been a low-key dig at Gunna, as this was also the name of his own classic 2018 song with Lil Baby. And the same could also be said about the cover art, which depicted Thug in the courtroom along with 8 other people, a likely reference to the fact that there were only 9 defendants left at this point due to their pleas and severances being taken. This, again, probably being a coded diss towards Gunna, who was no longer standing beside Thug against the state at this point. Like Gunna, Thug's album was also very successful, hitting number 2 on Billboard 200 with 89,000 units sold in the first week. In fact, beating out Gunna's project on both sales and the charting position. However, quality-wise, this wasn't a particularly engaging project, and it honestly felt a little bit rushed. The project was made up of mostly old recordings, and it had the vibe of a posthumous album made by someone that was actually still alive. This sentiment being shared by Rolling Stone, who would call Thug's sound diminished on this project. But despite Thug seemingly harboring animosity towards his old friend, Gunna would seemingly attempt to keep things cordial. And still, in his XXL magazine interview in April 2024, he would say that he still has love for Thug, as well as diplomatically saying that none of the other rappers who have commented on him being a snitch know what actually happened legally, since they're not part of the case. But it would seem like Thug wasn't receptive to Gunna's attempts at mending the relationship, because after Thug took a plea deal and got released sometime later, he would make a post and delete tweet where he made it clear that there was nothing to amend, and telling Gunna publicly to stop acting like they were still friends on the internet and saying that he doesn't even know him. Gunna's lawyer, on the other hand, would make another post defending Gunna's decision to take the Alford plea, arguing once again that Gunna's plea had done no harm to Thug's case, and then pointing out that in the end, Gunna and Thug had both done the same thing by pleading guilty by accepting a RICO charge. But the difference was that while Thug had to spend 30 months in jail and receive a whopping 15-year probation with incredibly strict conditions, Gunna had been able to record music and tour the world for that entire period, and he had also no probation and no conditions, adding that if some people really still want to blame someone for such a great deal, then they should blame the lawyer. At the end of the day, the downfall of Gunna's public reputation says a lot more about how rap fans are obsessed with exposing snitches these days than it does about Gunna actually being a snitch. Ever since prolific snitch exposer 1090 Jake took over the YouTube rap game, it seems like every rap fan is now looking for any excuse to label a rapper a snitch. I know a lot of people feel like Gunna betrayed Thug, but realistically, Gunna's statement had no bearing on Thug's ultimate outcome. In fact, it would be one particular person who did outright snitch on Thug, taking the stand on behalf of the state to save himself, that ironically ended up saving Thug in the end, as the biggest snitch of the whole case that the prosecution were relying on to bury Thug ended up being so erratic, unreliable, and untrustworthy that his involvement actually played a big part in collapsing the state's argument against Thug. And in the process, that super snitch ended up becoming a superstar from the stand, making himself rich in the process. I'm of course talking about YSL Woody, but before Woody took the stand and shook up the trial, delivering a W for Thug's team, at first, they would try a slightly different approach, attempting to paint the state's case as racist and discriminatory and trying their best to stop the years of self-incriminating lyrics that Thug had rapped from being played out in the courtroom.